I don't know how many probably caught the first few lines of this episode, but let me explain what that reference was. When Akko was saying sugar, spice, and everything nice, you might know now what I'm talking about if you watched Cartoon Network a long time ago in the early 2000s and, late, 1990s. That was a Powerpuff Girl reference. Yes, I've watched Powerpuff Girls. I loved him. I loved, seeing, Mojo Jojo. Really good show. I loved Powerpuff Girls growing up as a kid. And that sugar, spice, and everything nice, starting off with the episode, I'm like, whoa, did Trigger just fucking reference, like, a really good cartoon show? The Powerpuff Girls? I'm like, yo, that's a quality way to start an episode of any anime series. Just referencing a really good cartoon I used to watch all the time back in early 2000s. I remember sitting down watching a new Powerpuff Girl episode all the time. Mojo Jojo is a pretty good villain too, but I personally prefer him of all villains when it comes to Powerpuff Girls. Anyways, getting on topic though, besides that reference overall, this episode introduces or kind of dives a little bit more into the actual trio that were introduced in the movie. For instance, Amanda, I think the other one's Constance, I think, and I forget the other one's name. Please forgive me, because I've only heard their names a couple of times, and I only watched the movie and the OVA once, so please forgive me if I don't remember the actual character names for them. However, though, the three characters get their introductions, and most of the episode is showing them, showing what they're good at, showing, like, one is being very good at technology, one's kind of like a troublemaker, which we kind of already had that established with the last episode and all that with the broom, and in the previous episode, we already knew kind of one of them really loves eating potato chips, so, I mean, we kind of had a little bit of the traits of the characters we knew about, but this episode tries to focus once again more on them, and mainly Amanda in this episode, and kind of how she fits in with Akko, and how Akko and her constantly have arguments. And so this episode, it's an interesting way to kind of dive into these two characters, the differences, but also how similar they are. For instance, Amanda and Akko, and how they have disputes and how they're starting to become really good friends as the series goes on. But the main conflict of this episode is that the Sorcerer's Stone was stolen. And this is something I assume would eventually happen in the series. I've already talked about this a couple of episodes ago, that thanks to the Sorcerer's Stone being the source of all magic, and without it, magic couldn't be used, obviously that's going to be a target for people that do not like, witches, wizards, or anything like that. People are going to target that, because if they don't like magic, they're going to get rid of that, for there could be no magic in the world. And so that's an obvious target for anyone to go after, and obviously be something that is going to be a main conflict, like a big plot point in the future of the series. And so it happening in this episode, honestly, it didn't come at any surprise to me. However, the way it was settled was something very unexpected. So we come to find out through some world building thanks to Fafnir, which, hey, I see that, Studio Trigger, I see that shit. Fafnir, one of my personal favorite gods of Norse mythology. I love playing that man on Smite, so good job, Studio Trigger, for introducing Fafnir as a dragon. Many of you might not know, but that dragon actually is a reference to Norse mythology, so if you know about it, I tip my hat to you, and if you don't know about it, go look it up. Fafnir's a really cool dragon god in, Norse mythology. We found out that magic is falling out of grace. As time moves on, magic is not as popular as it once was, and also the same can be said about dragons, because Fafnir even talks about himself in this episode. And so what I got from this is that the Luna Nova Academy, like this academy where all witches come to learn their magic, it's really doing poorly. It's not having a lot of students come in. They're losing all of their budget. They don't have much funds at all, which raises the question, where is all the money? Where's the budget really going at? Like, why don't they have as much money anymore? But on top of that, though, we have to factor in, like, why is magic falling out of grace? Is it because of just science and the advancement of technology, or is it something else? Because clearly, something is going on here, which is the main crucial plot point I noticed in this episode, because we gotta remember what was already mentioned earlier on in Little Witch Academia. As we know, Akko is someone I'm willing to bet would never have been allowed to join the academy if it would have been at the golden age of witches and wizards, because what we found out in this episode, there was a golden age, and I'm assuming someone like Akko would never have been given a chance to join the academy because she has no knowledge about magic. She can't really use magic at all. She can't even fly a broom. So I don't think normally this academy would have ever allowed someone her like that inside of the academy at all. But thanks to, you know, magic falling out of grace, thanks to them losing a lot of money, they need to accept anyone they can into the school. It raises a lot of questions. What is really going on here? And I mean, also, what made, you know, the Golden Age no longer the Golden Age? And then maybe it has something to do with Shiny Chariot as well. If I had to assume anything, that's probably what the Golden Age is also referencing to as well. Regardless, though, let us talk about the entire conflict of this episode and how the stone was stolen. So, Akko and the gang eventually find out that the Sorcerer's Stone is stolen. They go after it to try to figure out how they can get it back, do it in their own way. Obviously, from what we've seen from previous episodes of Little Witch Academia, they get into some trouble. They're causing trouble once everything gets settled, and they get punished for it, which we see at the end of the episode. They're having to do laundry, clean up, do whatever they can to make sure the school can actually function. And so, in the typical fashion of Little Witch Academia, they do a good deed, but they kind of fuck up in some ways, so it causes them to actually get in trouble, and it backfires on them. And so the episode ends off in a very similar fashion to what we've seen in recent episodes of Little Witch Academia. But the conflict overall was settled, but it did raise questions about how Luna Nova actually operates and why they continuously do not have a budget and what really happened to the witches and wizards and why magic is not as popular anymore. So overall, episode gave us some good world building. Introduced a really cool character, Fafnir. Big fan. That's my personal favorite character so far in the series. I mean, besides, you know, our main cast, I'd say Fafnir is probably my favorite support/side character. I'm not talking about our main crew. I'm just talking about, you know, our support characters that'll probably barely ever be seen. I think Fafnir is probably going to be my favorite because, I mean, Fafnir's a fucking dwarf. I mean, I'm freaking short. I'm 5'3". I'm Chibi. So, I mean, just seeing, like, a dwarf dragon, yes. Yes. I cannot express it enough how badass it is to see Fafnir in a fucking anime, especially seeing him in Little Witch Academia of all things. Did not expect that at all. So, yeah, I mean, there was actually something about Akko's character I do want to mention. Akko seems to have some form of problem. And what I'm getting at is that there was something mentioned in this episode, which raises a lot of questions about Akko's character and how she is as a person. We have seen time and time again, since the start of Little Witch Academia, in the OVA and also in the movie, that Akko's always got into trouble. And it's a typical thing we see in the series, especially, you know, how they're getting punished at the end of the episode. It's a typical thing that happens all the time. And you notice, constantly, Akko does things that get her crew in trouble, get everybody in trouble, and they usually have to face the consequences alongside of her. Akko's always doing something like this. And in normal circumstances, even if you're a friend, you're probably going to get pissed off if you constantly get in trouble thanks to someone being a dumbass or doing stupid shit. And I mean, that's just going to happen. Regardless of how close you are with the person, even if it's a family member, you're probably going to get pissed off. Like, stop getting in fucking trouble. You're putting me in trouble and I'm having to do all this shit. You would probably get angry too. And there was something mentioned to Akko that seemed to really have an effect on her. When she was, like, someone stated to her saying, like, hey, if you continue to do this, eventually your friends are not going to be able to put up with it as well, and they're eventually just going to pretty much abandon you and leave you alone. That changed Akko's entire aura in that moment. Like, she did not feel the same. She acted completely different, and it felt like to me when she started acting different in that scene, it's like she was thinking about whatever happened already in her past. We don't know much about Akko's upbringing. The only thing we really know about Akko is that she wants to be a witch. She looks up to Shiny Chariot. That's the only big thing we really know about Akko. We don't know everything about her. We know she used to collect a lot of cards and stuff, but there's little details about her past, like her family and all that, we don't really know about at all. And it makes you question if she was somehow bullied in the past. Was she someone that lost a lot of friends thanks to how she acts, thanks to how she gets a lot of people in trouble, or the way she constantly, you know, asserts herself and tries to take charge? Is she someone that's lost a lot of people in the past, like friends, because of how she acts? The way she changed her mood that quickly makes me assume that's what happened. Regardless, though, I'm really enjoying how Akko does have a lot of faults in her character. She's not a perfect MC, which I am actually very grateful for, and because of this being mentioned in the episode, and seemingly to have an effect on her, it makes me assume that she's going to be a very well-written character, because, I mean, normally I wouldn't put up with a character that's constantly acting like that, but it seems like because she has these problems, she's a flawed character that realizes she has problems because of the way she changed her mood at that moment. So if Studio Trigger wants to do something like that, I'm completely fine with that. I would love to see Akko's character take that type of development, and honestly, I would like to see that from a lot of characters from any other anime or manga series I, read, watch. That's something I would love to see. So yeah, tell me your thoughts in the comments below. How'd you feel about this week's episode of Little Witch Academia? Did you enjoy it? Did you hate it? Please let me know your honest thoughts in the comments below. And once again, that Powerpuff Girls reference. Fucking great A. Fucking love that. So y'all have a wonderful day or not wherever you live. Please be safe. Chibi out.